It's time for another video where I test the most important aspects like range and consumption, acceleration, cabin noise, and charging. But before we do that, let me just go through the base fact. This is the Zeekr 001 Privilege. That's why you see the two-tone color with the black roof and the big rims. Welcome to It's Only Electric. Let's start. As you see, this is a big car. It's measuring almost 5 meters in total length with a wheelbase of 3 meters with a lot of interior space and boot capacity. So it's a family car. A big family car also needs to be equipped with a big battery pack for some good range. So in this case, it's a NMC battery pack with a gross capacity of 100 kilowatt hours and a net capacity of around 96 kilowatt hours. So that's a big battery pack, translating into a WLTP range of 585 kilometers. So this is the all-wheel drive version with two motors, one at the rear, one at the front. Combined output, 544 horsepower, 686 Newton meters of torque. That's a lot of power. Should be able to do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. We're gonna test that in 3.8 seconds flat with a top speed of 200 kilometers per hour. So the Privilege version comes with these big 22-inch rims, 265/40 tires all around. It's Continental Premium Contact 6. This is big pieces of rubber and wheels, weighs a lot, but fills out the wheel arches and the car in a really good way. Gives the car a sporty and premium look. How much noise will they really add to the cabin? And how much range will they eat up? And with the slowest charge port on the market, takes a long time to open, it's really slow. You need to plan ahead before opening the charge port. Good thing though, it's optimized for Tesla supercharging because the charge port is placed on the left side, the driver's side, and at the rear end of the car, perfectly suited for supercharging. Another thing that's perfect for that is that it's a 400 volt system with a good charge speed. It can deliver up to 200 kilowatts of DC charging, 10 to 80% in around 30 minutes. We're gonna test that and see if it's possible, so stay tuned. When it comes to home charging, actually also very impressive, 3-phase support with 22 kilowatts. And if you want to know more details about the car, don't miss my full review. I put the link up here for you to watch it later on. Now it's time to start, and let's start with the range and consumption. The first session of my range and consumption test, I'm actually driving it on autopilot or the LCC system. As you hear, it's beeping because I've heard a lot of people complain about it being unusable or like unfinished. I've seen some early reviews and tests, but it is not that bad actually. I mean, it's not on par with the best systems on the market. It is not on par with BMW, Tesla, Neo, that's Xpeng. All those are better currently than the Zeekr's self-driving capabilities. I mean, this car has all the technology, all the hardware for doing the right things, but it's lacking some refinement. I mean, it's still a bit rough around the edges, so some polishing is needed. Some parts is regarding the graphics, the inputs, etc., the illustrations, but other parts, like it is behaving a bit too harsh. For instance, when correcting you, it throws you back in the lane a bit too aggressively. Other things, like when I'm switching lane, it's continuing, reactivating the self-driving function, but it's beeping, and it's beeping fairly aggressively, a bit high. So every time you end up being like, what happened? Did I break something? So some polishing is needed for sure. But otherwise, I think it keeps you nicely in the lane. It is a bit seeking the mid of the drive lane. Maybe that's why it's called Zeekr. But there is good functions to it, and at least now during dry roads and the summer, I think it's really usable and it works good. I activate it by double tapping the steering wheel icon here at the left side of the steering wheel. So now it's activated. If you press it once, you activate the speed assist. So it just keeps the speed for you. So now it's searching for the lane actually, because now we don't have any lanes marked on the road because it's recently redone new asphalt on this road strip. So no lines. But still keeps the car good, keeps going. Now I'm pressing the arrow, the round arrow, and that one actually means that you reset the speed limit. So it jumps back to the certain speed limit on the certain stretch of road you are at currently. So that's a good feature. So if you adjust the speed yourself, maybe a bit below or a bit above the speed limit, you can just press that one to reset it and jump back to the current speed limit on the road. The pad here to the left is to adjust things like the speed limit. If you press it upwards, you raise the speed. If you press it downwards, you lower the speed. The left and right side is to decrease or increase the distance to the cars in front of you. So all the controls are actually shown very clearly when you adjust them on a head-up display, not here on the central screen. So they have really utilized all the screens, all the screen layouts and areas in a good way to maximize the capacity of all the inches you have in front of you. It's 20 degrees Celsius outside, dry roads, no wind, so fairly good conditions. And the cycle I'm driving now is the same as always. So it's a 80 kilometers long stretch with mixed speeds between 50 all the way up to 110 kilometers per hour. So average speed 93 kilometers per hour. So this will be exciting. I stick to a set of certain rules. For instance, dry mode set to eco, AC, normally set to 20 degrees, but it's a bit too cold, so I'm driving it on 21 degrees Celsius. I've also activated the eco setting for the air conditioning. So eco dry mode, AC set to auto 21 degrees, and eco activated for the AC too. And the last rule is I always stick to the speed limits. I mean, I've been driving the car for a couple of days now, and until now, I've been fairly impressed by the low consumption. I mean, this is a big and heavy car, and especially with those 265s, the tires all around, that's really hefty pieces. I mean, 22-inch 265s, that's a lot. But currently, I have been driving 26 kilometers, and the current average consumption is 21.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And this will go downwards for sure. I have seen a lot lower consumption. It's 80, I'm driving 85. Yeah, and you hear the sound. It's clearly nothing you can withstand when driving long trips if you're not driving on autopilot and set the speed to exactly the speed limit every time, because it's very responsive and gives you the warnings immediately. The good thing is that there is a fairly easy way to deactivate that function, and you do that by pulling downwards from the top of the screen. Then you can enter the quick settings, And there is two settings that I tend to turn off, especially when I drive car and recording at the same time. The first thing is the driver monitor, because it's a good function, don't get me wrong, but at this stage, when I'm pretty busy talking and doing things, it's getting a bit distracting. Now I'm fighting the car actually. It tries to keep me in the wrong lane. And it's fairly aggressive. I really need to use some force to pull the car back into the lane. So that's one of the rough edges example. Okay, back to the overspeed warning. To the right of the driver monitor, deactivation, you have the overspeed warning setting. You press that and you deactivate the annoying beeps. There's actually two more things that's a bit annoying. In slower speeds, there's kind of a silent hum or buzz, or maybe noise coming from the right speaker. Maybe it's something just with this car, but I can hear it with my right ear when I have it towards that direction. The other thing that will eat your brain up from the inside, that's the seat belt buckle at the passenger side. It has a tendency to turn the other way around, so backwards with the hard plastic or metal part, hear it now, hitting towards the B-pillar plastic. That's really annoying. That is really annoying. They should put some soft touch materials in that exact spot, or some fabrics maybe on the buckle to make sure that that doesn't happen. Status just hitting 40 kilometers. Average consumption just dropped under 20, so 19.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And regarding the consumption, Zeekr has really done a great job giving you a good amount of information. So it's perfect for tech savvy or information hungry people out there. I mean, compared to other new brands, BYD, etc., Xpeng, this really has a lot of information. So there is a application in the application drawer called My Car, and it really gives you all you need. Under trips and statistics, you have the trip options, and you have the consumption history, the last 10, the last 100 kilometers. And under that, you have 2 tripometers. And they give you a lot of information. They give you the total drive time, the total distance, the average speed, the consumed amount of kilowatt hours energy, the total consumption, and also the consumption while in motion and the static consumption. That's nice. So static means that when standstill, maybe the AC for keeping the cabin temperature or electronics, screens, etc. is on, and that's also consuming energy. So that's good to see. You also have the energy distribution information that tells you what things that are drawing what amount of energy. So you have driving, battery, preconditioning and temperature control, air conditioning, the 12-volt system, and other things. So really great information. And on top of that, this is one of the smartest things. Not everyone has that. And that's the trip-o-meter. Trip 1, Trip 2 also comes with a timestamp. It's time to summarize the range and consumption test. The car was actually underreporting the actual distance by almost 4%. So I needed to adjust the final consumption, and it ended up at 18.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That equals to a full range of 100% of the battery pack of 519 kilometers. If you compare that to the stated WLTP range of 585 kilometers, it actually is approximately 89%. So not super impressive, but I've tried and driven the car a lot, and in city driving, of course, it drops a lot. I have seen consumption down to like 16 in city driving, or 15.5. So it tends to consume a bit more energy in higher speeds, of course, even if it has a low CV value of 0.23. That can be compared to the BMW i5 M60 that I recently tested, with almost the exact same consumption. Yeah, and by the way, I can compare it to the BYD Seal all-wheel drive I tested a week ago, and that one had 17.2. Not that far away actually, and that's a smaller car, not as heavy. Let's move on to the acceleration test. So Sports Mode is active, state of charge 90%, and it's dry roads, 19 degrees outside. Let's do the first session. Go.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 3.79 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 3.96 seconds.
3.96. 0 to 100, 3.79, 0 to 60 miles per hour. Let's do another run. Second attempt, 90% state of charge, same conditions. Come on.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 3.70 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 3.88 seconds.
3.88. Let's go.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 3.64 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 3.82 seconds.
Fairly close to the stated 3.8 seconds. So 3.83 seconds was the best possible 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time I achieved, and 3.65 seconds 0 to 60 miles per hour. So I would call that on specified time, and I mean, that's good. It's a quick car to drive, and it pulls really nice. It is not as aggressive as the BMW was, and the Kia EV6 GT, not as aggressive as Teslas tend to be, at least not the start, but it picks up really good and still manages a really good 0 to 100 time. And it feels very well balanced, even if it has a good balance between the front and the rear motor, both very powerful motors. I think they deliver 200 kilowatts each. It doesn't feel too front-wheel drive biased. It's really well balanced and never feels unsafe. Let's move on to the cabin noise test. I think this is interesting for you guys to be able to compare it to other cars, because cabin noise is important if you want to travel comfortably. So here is the final result, and as you see here in the graphics, I always measure cabin noise in different speeds: 50, 70, 90 and 110 kilometers per hour, just to help you to be able to compare the result. I actually thought the car was going to be a bit more silent, but without any acoustic glass and with the wide tires that this car has, I mean 265s all around, driving around on 22-inch wheels, that of course ruins at least some of the comfort, at least when it comes to noise. The car doesn't feel noisy, just let me be clear with that, but it is still not on par with the BMW i5, for instance, not even the M60, and that also goes for the ID.7, the EQS, for instance. All those are more silent than this one. So let's move on to the last part, and probably the part that excites and interests you most, and that's the charging test. And this is the final charge curve. What I did, I charged the car from 10 all the way up to 80%. That's what I always do, and I navigated to the fast charger after driving a while, and it was 22 degrees Celsius outside. So good conditions, and It has a built-in feature for preheating or preconditioning the battery pack if necessary, cooling it, heating it before fast charging. So that's really good. I haven't found a way to manually activate that function. Top speed achieved at 20% state of charge, 201 kilowatts. And the stated peak charge power on this car is 200, so right on spec. And this is where the limits are set for CCS 2 charging at 400 volts, so it's really nice. And as you see, it tapers fairly quickly and starts early, but still has a really nice charge curve and keeps good speeds all the way into the goal of 80%. And at 80%, it actually managed to hold a speed of 75 kilowatts. Impressive. I mean, I think this is one of the best Chinese brands, Chinese or Swedish or whatever it is. If I don't count the Xpeng G9, of course, or the G6, Xpeng is really ahead in the game when it comes to charging. The updated Zeekr 001 on the Chinese market, that's another story. I think that it has like 5C charging. That's a whole nother level. I mean, 800 volt, and I think it's, or even maybe 1000 volts, and I think it cranks out like 450 kilowatts or something as a top speed. But that's not available in Europe yet, and will probably take a while. I guess earliest first half of next year, maybe later. So this is what we have currently, and as you see, I mean, it's not a bad charge curve, and 10 to 80% took 30 minutes and 52 seconds. So that's also right on spec. Zeekr is themselves on their website is stating 30 minutes. And the really good thing is that it's also optimized for the supercharger network. You will have plenty of opportunities of reaching the actual top speed. So we have went through all the tests and all the results, and I will try to summarize my view on the car and my view on the results. I mean, all in all, it's a really great car, and to be honest, this is one of my favorite cars in this class currently. There's one thing I want to mention, and that's the software. And as you saw, I talked about and tested out the self-driving capability, the LCC system, and I know that there has been some issues with it, at least in the early versions of the software. Now it's dry and summer, so I haven't seen it in the worst conditions, but I must say I still think it works pretty good. It's a bit rough around the edges and needs some fixes. I mean, it can be a bit too harsh when it comes to acceleration and braking, so it adjusts the speed a bit too aggressively, and it also beeps too high. The chimes are really piercing through your head. So the chimes could be a bit more settled. So I have noticed a couple of software bugs. They are really not any showstoppers, but let me just mention the worst ones. The number one is the easy entry functionality, which helps you to enter the car by moving the seat backwards and the steering wheel upwards to make it easier for you to jump in. Doesn't always go back to its saved driver position. Sometimes I tend to end up sitting too far away from the steering wheel. I haven't figured out why this happens or at which combination of activities I do. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, because like 1 out of 5 times I end up too far away from the steering wheel. So probably some sequence of starting activities I do doesn't add up to the software, and it doesn't adjust the seat position. Another thing is the battery charge limit. I use the mobile app, and by the way, the mobile app seems to work fairly good with a lot of functions like cabin temperature adjustments, lock and unlock the car. I mean, all the functions you have in the Tesla application, for instance, is available here. So that works good. But I adjusted the charge limit and set it down to 50% because I needed some more juice, but not too much, because I always want to drive it down to 10% to charge it, of course, for this video. So I wanted to charge it overnight to 50%, But and I adjusted that in the application. But when I woke up in the morning, I noticed that it actually charged all the way up to 80% anyway. So even if I got the confirmation in the application that it's set the limit to 50%, I also saw it in the screen here in the car. It's still overrided that one and charged it to 80%. I've also seen some settings not getting saved. For instance, it doesn't save the auto lane change assistance function. So I always activate that one, and it always resets when I jump back into the car. So I don't think that's by purpose. I think it's just some software issues. That's it for today. We have done all the tests, so I hope you enjoyed this video and the information in it. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and engage. Write comments. Share your thoughts about the car. Ask me questions. I will answer for sure. And as I always say, stay electric, and thank you for watching. Speak to you soon.